Hello and welcome back to another video where I make things and you watch me make things. Good for you. You have a lot of patience. After I finished my last YouTube video, I decided that I probably wasn't living up to my potential as a videographer as best as I could, and I felt guilty on behalf of the people who hired me to be a professional videographer in the past and the videography professors that I have had. So I decided that I wanted to try and start making my videos look a little bit more professional, a little bit more consistent, a little bit easier to follow. So we'll see if I can stick to that. Hopefully you will notice less chaotic energy in this video. Still some chaotic energy because I'm still me, but less. Like, I hope to go from a 10 to a nice 7.5. I think that's doable. One thing that I would like to include in my future videos is me sort of sitting down at the beginning and end and opening and closing my videos with a description of what I am going to attempt to do, and then at the end a description of how well that went, just to give you a more complete sense of the project. So with that said, let's get started talking about my project for today. If you are Christian or know many Christian people, you may be aware that it is currently Lent, which is the 40 days leading up to Easter, and during this time many Christian people partake in some form of fasting. Some people interpret this more literally than others. I was raised in a church that really encouraged people to think outside of the box with how they chose to fast. So I have chosen this year that for the 40 days of Lent, I'm not going to be making anything for myself. I'm not going to be sewing, crocheting, crafting, painting, anything for me. I'm only going to be doing those things for other people, and I'm trying to consciously engage in a lot of my hobbies with the mentality of creating gifts for others instead of things to cherish for myself. So today, I will be making a succulent pillow for my younger sister, Paige. She really loves plants. She's a vegan. She's very crunchy granola. I adore her. She loves succulents. She names all of her plants like half politician, half Disney Channel star names. Like she has Alexandria Russo Ocasio-Cortez, which is like Alex Russo from Wizards of Waverly Place and AOC. And she has Hillary Duff Clinton, I think. Anyway, I'm going to be making her a pillow that looks like a succulent. This image is going to be my inspiration, so I'm going to try to use some thread or yarn to mimic the purple that is around the outside of those leaves. Are they leaves when they're on a succulent? I don't really know. Anyway, I'm going to make it, I'm going to stuff it, I'm going to give it to her. I pulled my bookshelf closer to my rocking chair so you guys could see it and you'd think I was smart and cultured. Is it working? Are you impressed? As part of this quest for less chaos, I went ahead and tidied up my entire sewing room. So now I'm going to give you a little tour and let you see how neat and tidy it is before it probably becomes disheveled again in like 3 days. But for now, let's enjoy it. So this is where you would enter this room. I use this hinge on the divider to make this kind of like a little door. This is actually our dining room, but I moved into it when we all moved home for quarantine because my younger sister and I adore each other but do not cohabitate well, and we couldn't really have anybody over to dine in here, so we were just eating in the kitchen or the living room. So I put my bed in here and I was just living here. Now my younger sister is back at college and I live in the room you just saw me do the intro in. But so yeah, that's why there is this like temporary divider wall that we got off of Amazon separating this space. And that is also why there's still a bed here, because that's where my sisters sleep when they're home. I have 3 sisters, if you didn't know. One of them has a husband though, so she has to sleep in like a larger bed because she carries like a whole ass man with her. But anyway. And these chairs are just from the dining table, and I put them here to be like a little bench. That's a weighted blanket that I got that makes me anxious to sleep under, so I leave it in here. So we have Diana conveniently living underneath this chandelier because I kept smacking my head on it, and I figured that she would prevent that because I can't walk through her. Behind her, we have this thing that I bought at Goodwill, and I thought it was like a cool and funky bookshelf, and then people were like, "That's a china cabinet, Julia. It's just missing the part." that goes underneath. And they were definitely right because there's like a ledge inside for all the dishes, but I really like it for sewing stuff. So it lives on top of the dining table. This is my ironing board. These are my fancy ironing accessories. This like lets you get into all the little corners or like do sleeves. This is an ironing ham. I love it. It lets you do like rounded edges. So if we come down under the dining room table, we have this, which is stuffing that is going to be used in today's pillow. This is fabric scraps that will also be used to stuff the pillow. And then here we have the pattern suitcase. It is currently holding all of my patterns. I did not tidy them up when I put them in here, but I will one day. But yeah, there's a lot of commercial patterns, a lot of self-drafted patterns, and they all live in this suitcase that a friend of mine bought me at an antique mall. I love this suitcase so much because it actually has like a combination lock, and you have to know the correct code to get into it. And when my friend bought it for me, we actually didn't know the code because the antique seller didn't remember it. And another one of my friends actually tried every 3-digit number combination one at a time until they figured it out. So that was lovely of them, and I love that suitcase. This is completed projects. That's my most recent dress. You can see my jester costume down here. This is the medieval dress because you may remember in that video, it turned everything it touched blue, so it is in naughty fabric jail for fabric that turns my stuff blue. There's a hoop skirt that's not doing too great right now. I have to make some adjustments, but it lives down here. This bin is other completed projects. So that's everything down there. There used to be so much more stuff down there. So now let's go ahead and look inside the china cabinet. So here we have embroidery thread and regular thread and then buttons behind them, and underneath there's like some fabric markers and iron-on stuff that I have that's like more for making t-shirts, but I kept them in here. This is trim, lace, ribbons, beads, bells, anything like that. On the back, you can see I put up a little hook to hang my embroidery hoops on. This is the closures box, so it's got like hook and bars, hook and eyes, grommets, all that stuff. This is a pair of scissors I was gifted, and it feels too fancy to ever take out of its case because they're gold plated, so they just live in this box, reminding me that I could be fancy if I ever got up enough courage to open them. Here we have zippers, anything on a spool, so that's like some lace, elastic. This is boning, this is hem tape, interfacing. That all lives right here. So this second layer is all, I just have my camera, it's fine. The second layer, it's a little dark here, sorry. Second layer is all projects that are not completed or things that I have to mend. So going through everything really made me realize I have so many abandoned projects and I really need to start working on them more and trying to make some headway there. And a lot of this is just like things that a button fell off or a seam started splitting and I was like, oh, I'll hem that up or put that button back on or do whatever I needed to do. And then I didn't because I like wear a fraction of my clothes now in the pandemic because I go outside like once a week and I have a work uniform every day that I'm at work, even though I work virtually. So I just like didn't notice that a ton of my clothes were living in here now, but I'm gonna get to them and finish all these projects. So down here we have regular fabric storage. So over here, this is fabric from previous projects and I've sort of spooled it all up on cardboard so that it is much easier to like pull out and just grab a piece. And down here there are some larger spools for things I had larger portions of. And then over here, this is fabric that is going to be used in a future project. This is leftover naughty fabric that turns everything blue. This is some fabric for upcoming videos. This is like a Joann's run that I did for a specific project. So that's all living in there. Very nice. Up here, there is fleece because it was just too big to go in there. And this is the table that goes on my sewing machine for when I want a bigger work surface, but I never do. So it's just gonna live up here. So let's come around past Diana, and this is my workspace. You probably don't recognize it because you've probably never seen it this tidy, but it looks so much nicer than it did in the last couple videos. It's just got my sewing machine and my serger, and my serger's kind of at the back because I don't use it as often, but it's still really lovely to have. And then this bucket is my things I want handy whenever I'm sewing, so it's right next to the chair whenever I'm sewing something. So it's like a ruler, pins, scissors, needles, things I don't want to have to run back and forth to the cabinet to get that I'm just going to be reaching for all the time. Up here we have the most important part of any sewing room, the giant poster for a mockumentary about amateur Australian ballroom dancing. I'm obsessed with this film, and it has its rightful place of honor up here. There are a couple posters from plays that I was in or plays that I directed, and a couple photos that I hung up. I hung all that up when this was like my bedroom and I wanted to be able to look at it every day, but I don't mind having it over me while I sew. Anyway, yeah, this is the whole room. I really like it. I'm really excited that it's so tidy now. I feel very blessed to live somewhere where my mom was just like, you can take over this whole dining room for sewing, because that was really chill of her and she didn't have to do that. So if you like my videos, appreciate my mom for making them possible. So these are all the supplies that I'm gonna be starting with today. On the left side, you can see the green fabric that's gonna be the base of the leaves. Above it, you can see the purple yarn that I'm going to use for the edges. The colors aren't exact to my inspiration image, but I think they're gonna be fine. I have fabric scissors to cut that. And on the right side, I have old grocery bags that I'm going to use to be the template for the leaves, and then paper scissors to cut those, and a Sharpie to outline them. And before we go any further, I just want to show you my outfit today because I'm really into it. I have D&D later, so I kind of dressed like my character because I'm really afraid she's about to die, and I thought maybe this would help me like connect with her and save her and not die in battle. So this is what the process of making the pattern pieces for this project looked like. First, I flattened a bunch of those grocery bags, and then I sketched out the shape I wanted for one of the leaves on it. I was using a folded edge to make sure that they were directly symmetrical, and I was making it in various sizes so that I would be able to create the gradient effect of the leaves going out. I was just sort of freehanding each one and holding the other ones up to it to make them look alike, and they came out relatively similar, but they definitely could have been more identical. Then I laid out my fabric, and I laid it out so that it was 4 times over itself. So it was 4 times thickness, basically. So every time I was cutting out one leaf, I was cutting out enough fabric to make 2 leaves, because each leaf requires 2 layers of fabric. So I just cut it out over and over again until I had enough to make 6 leaves in each size.
After cutting everything out, it was time to get to sewing. So I would just take 2 pieces that were the same size, bring them over to the sewing machine, and stitch almost all the way around the outside, but I leave a small gap. That gap is what you use to turn the inside out so that the raw edges are facing inward, and it's also how you're going to stuff it later. You will have to hand sew it closed, so there's a trade-off. If you leave it bigger, the turning inside out and stuffing are easier, but there's more hand sewing. Smaller, less hand sewing, but harder to stuff and turn out. After everything is sewn together, you're going to clip the tips of them. That allows them to turn out pointier. And then you're going to use a dowel or a pair of scissors or whatever you've got to turn them all inside out so the raw edges are inside. Alright, so this is the point where I went in to put in the purple detailing on the outside, and I could not get it to work. My needle wasn't big enough, my yarn wasn't small enough, it just wasn't happening. So I abandoned the idea. I'm sorry, Paige, I still love you. So the next step was stuffing. So I collected this giant bag of mostly cotton muslin scraps, and I was going to use it to make my own stuffing because I didn't think I had enough of the pre-made stuff. So how I was turning this fabric into stuffing is I was folding it over itself a bunch of times and then just cutting small scraps out of it so that it was sort of fluffy and would feel like pillow stuffing. This is a dramatic reenactment of how tired my hands started to get after I was doing this for a long time. Look at all that sweet, sweet stuffing.
So I have here all of the stuffed leaves except for this one that I'm going to show you how to stuff on. And oh look, it's a full bag of this stuffing because this was more than enough and I did not need to put myself through that. I'm fine though. I feel fine about it. I feel great. I'm going to show you how to stuff the last remaining leaf of the succulent. Basically, I just take a handful of this polyfill stuffing, I open up the little opening, and I start shoving it in with my fingers. I started doing this with the little dowel rod they give you, but I found that because it has less surface area on the end, it was not as good as my chubby fingers. So you just kind of tuck it in, and it can take a while because your fingers just kind of go through the material. But if you just keep at it, it eventually will all go inside. And how much stuffing you put in is kind of just to your preference, because different people like things really squishy, some people like them with a little more body. If you're making them for somebody else, you're just kind of guessing. But I would say just put it in until it feels like a good pillow to you. There's no need to be super scientific about it. So then to get this little point, I just kind of shove my finger inside of it towards that point to make sure that it is all full up, and kind of move the stuffing down, and then you see the end is a little bit empty again, so I just grab another handful. I don't need quite that much, but I'm just gonna start stuffing it in again. Also, my hand is still messed up from cutting all that stuff. It feels like my thumb feels tingly when anything touches it, and I tried to lift weights earlier today and picked one up with my thumb like underneath, and it like twanged, and I was like, I can't believe I injured my body for stuffing that I didn't even need because I had enough of this store-bought stuff. That's just how it goes though. All right. There you go, all full up.
So now that you have this beautiful, plump, succulent thing, I'm going to show you how to sew up this little gap so that you can't even see the seam. So you take your threaded needle, I double thread, you could single thread, I feel like more secure with a double threading. You put it inside and pull it out from the inside, so your knot goes on the inside. And then basically the process you're going to go through is you're going to tuck the ends in just the same way they are with the rest of it and hold it sort of shut so that it looks good, and then you're going to take a little stitch from one side, pull through, and then you're going to go to the other side. If your thread doesn't get tangled like mine, okay, good. All right, then you go to the other side and do another little stitch just across from it, and then you're going to keep moving back and forth until it is all closed up. You should be giving gentle little tugs as you go to make sure your stitches are taut. And then at the end, this is what it'll look like.
So here I have these 30 complete succulent leaves ready to be sewn into a whole succulent. Do I have a plan? Kind of. By the way, my hand is still messed up. Like every time I pick something up, my thumb is like boing. So, amputation, maybe, a cast, a manicure, who knows, but we're gonna have to do something about that.
So this is the process I went through to put the succulent together. Basically, I started with one of the small leaves, curved it around itself, sewed it in place, then stuck another on and sewed that in place. I was using a whip stitch to sew the bottom of the new leaf to sort of the side of the old leaf. I was definitely figuring it out as I went, and it doesn't look perfect from the underside. You can definitely see a lot of that stitching, but you know what? It holds together and it looks like a succulent, so I'm pleased with that. This process took maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. I just threw on some Netflix, sat down, and got going.
So this is how the succulent pillow turned out. I think that it is pretty good for my first time making something like this, and I think that my sister is definitely going to like it, so I'm excited about it. But there are a couple things that I would do differently if I was going to make another one of these. The first is I would make the leaf pattern on a computer so that I could size it up and size it down and have them all be the exact same shape, just differing sizes, because they are slightly different shapes, and I think that that could just improve the look of it a little bit and make the increase in size more uniform as opposed to just freehanding it the way I did. I think I would also change a little bit of how I put the leaves on the back. I would just, as I moved out, move them more aggressively up the sides of the leaves, because that's what I was doing, but not intensely enough. So like basically the bottom of each leaf sews to the side of the leaf before it, and I think as it goes out you have to get further and further up the side to avoid it curving back in. So to avoid the curving back in, I wound up having to tack down a couple of the leaves to sort of pull the leaves behind them up, and if I had moved where they were put a little bit, I don't think that would have happened. I would also, if I was going to make another one, do something about the back. Like I would maybe sew another ring of fabric here and then stuff this, but I hadn't budgeted time or fabric for that, so it's not gonna happen this time. But you know, if I were to make another one of these, I think not necessarily something I'd do different, but just an idea would be like to make these and put them on top of pot pillows, or to make like a series of these in different sizes. I think that could be really cute for like a room that had a garden-y theme. But as it is, I think this one is going to make a really nice gift, and it was fun to make something different than I usually do. I don't make a lot of squishy things, I make a lot of apparel. So this was really fun. I'm glad I took on this project. I think this is one of my most followable videos, like something you could really recreate for yourself. So if anybody does try that, feel free to let me know in the comments or link an image. I would love to see you attempting the same pillow. One of my now 74 followers. I have 74 followers now. I've gained one. I'm moving up in the world. Anyway, this is the end. Tomorrow I bring it to my sister.
Oh yeah, I forgot you.